A millionaire nerd met a sexy waitress in the most unlikely place, and what happened next changed both their lives forever. This isn't just a story about wealth and struggle, or beauty and insecurity. It's about how love can break through barriers, about second chances, and about discovering that true connection has nothing to do with money or appearances. Before we begin, comment below and tell us where you're watching from, because this is one love story you'll never forget. The neon lights of Manhattan cast a glow over the crowded streets as Ethan Price walked briskly, clutching a leather satchel. To most, Ethan was just another wealthy man in a custom suit, but beneath the expensive fabric was the soul of a socially awkward genius. He had made his millions in tech apps and algorithms that revolutionized small corners of the internet, but his personal life remained a barren wasteland. Dates rarely went past the awkward silent stage. Friends teased him for being more comfortable with code than conversation. That night, loneliness pressed down on him heavier than usual. His assistant had teased him about never having a proper date. A few drinks later, Ethan had stumbled upon a discreet website that offered a curious service, not companionship of the scandalous sort, but something that simulated a real date. Conversation, dinner, laughter, an illusion of romance for people like him who couldn't quite manage the real thing. It felt ridiculous, but also liberating. When the reservation was confirmed, he almost cancelled a dozen times, until he walked into that cozy downtown restaurant, where the dim lighting reflected on mahogany tables, and saw her. Her name was Sofia Morales, 24, striking in a fitted black waitress dress that clung in all the right places. But her beauty wasn't just physical. Her laugh was magnetic, her smile sharp, her eyes alive with a kind of fire he couldn't quantify. She was bold, witty, confident in ways Ethan had never been. When she approached his table, she leaned casually on the chair opposite him. "So, you're my date for the night. I hope you don't bore me to death, millionaire boy." The words hit him like a jolt. No one ever spoke to him like that. Usually people fawned over his money or mocked his awkwardness, but Sofia seemed unimpressed, almost amused. "I'll try my best," Ethan stammered, adjusting his glasses, cheeks heating. She smirked. "Relax, I'm just here to have fun. You're paying me to keep you company, not to worship your bank account." The blunt honesty disarmed him. For the first time in years, Ethan laughed, not the polite chuckle he gave board members, but a real laugh that cracked through his stiff exterior. Dinner unfolded with surprising ease. She teased him mercilessly about his nerdy habits, his obsession with obscure sci-fi shows, his lack of dating experience, his nervous habit of tapping his pen against his palm. But instead of feeling humiliated, he felt seen. And strangely, she listened when he opened up, when he confessed that sometimes, despite the wealth, he felt like the loneliest man in New York. Her teasing softened. "You know, money doesn't mean much when you're eating takeout alone every night," Sofia said, sipping her wine. Her words lingered, carving deep into his guarded heart. By the end of the evening, when they stepped into the cool Manhattan night, Ethan realized he didn't want it to end. The contract said it was just one date. But as she turned to leave, her heels clicking against the pavement, something inside him panicked. "Wait," he blurted, voice cracking. "Could I see you again? Not as part of this arrangement, just me asking you." Sofia froze, her confident mask flickering for a moment. She had been paid for many dates before, though never like this. Never with someone so unassuming, so genuinely vulnerable. Something in his eyes stopped her from brushing him off with a playful quip. "You don't even know me," she said softly. "Then let me," Ethan replied. For the first time in her career of pretending, Sofia felt the dangerous flutter of something real, a spark she hadn't expected, a spark she wasn't sure she wanted, but she didn't walk away. "Fine," she said, folding her arms, though her lips curled into the hint of a smile. "One more chance. Don't blow it, nerd." And just like that, what began as a transaction, it started to shift into something messier, riskier, and infinitely more real. Their worlds couldn't have been further apart. His sterile penthouse filled with tech gadgets and empty silence, her tiny apartment above a laundromat cluttered with books, thrift store clothes, and the lingering scent of fried food from the diner downstairs. Yet somehow, against the sprawling chaos of the city, their lives began to intertwine. At first it was a game. She mocked his formality, forcing him to loosen up. He surprised her with his awkward but sincere attempts at romance, bouquets delivered in algorithmically perfect arrangements, dates planned with the precision of a coded schedule. She laughed at the absurdity of it all, but the laughter came with warmth. Still, tension bubbled under the surface. For Ethan, every moment with her threatened exposure. What if she only wanted him for his money? For Sofia, every glance at his tailored suits reminded her of the gap between them. She couldn't afford to fall for a man who lived in a world she could never belong to. And yet, late one evening, as rain pattered against his penthouse windows and they sat cross-legged on the floor sharing cheap Chinese takeout, Sofia caught herself staring at him, his glasses slipping down his nose, his tie discarded, his laugh unguarded. He wasn't the arrogant millionaire stereotype. He was Ethan, earnest, lonely, imperfect, and a heart betrayed her. But love born across such a divide rarely comes without cost. And soon, both Ethan and Sofia would face pressures neither of them were ready for. Ethan had never been good at reading people, but with Sofia, things were different. Every smirk, every sarcastic jab, every flicker in her eyes fascinated him. She was a puzzle he couldn't solve with equations or algorithms, and that made her dangerously captivating. Yet beneath the playful teasing, he sensed something deeper. There were moments when her laughter faltered, when her gaze drifted away as if burdened by invisible weights. He wanted to ask, but every time, his fear of pushing too hard held him back. For Sofia, agreeing to see Ethan again had felt reckless. Her life was complicated enough, working long shifts at the diner, juggling bills, carrying the scars of past disappointments. Men with money had crossed her path before, and they were all the same, entitled, arrogant, seeing her as disposable. But Ethan, he was different, too different. A part of her wanted to run, yet something else kept her rooted. Their second date was not in a luxury restaurant but in a hole-in-the-wall jazz bar tucked away in Harlem. Sofia had insisted, "If we're going to keep doing this, we're doing it my way," she declared, dragging him by the hand through the bustling streets. Ethan, dressed in yet another tailored suit, looked hilariously out of place among the dim lights and smoky atmosphere. Sofia couldn't stop laughing when he tried to order a vintage wine, only to be handed a beer bottle instead. "You're hopeless," she teased, clinking her glass against his. "Adaptable," he countered, though his lips curled nervously as the music swelled. Something shifted. Watching her sway to the rhythm, head tilted back, eyes closed, Ethan felt a pang of envy not for her beauty, but for her freedom. She moved through life without calculation, while he lived bound by numbers and routines. Later, walking her home, Sofia broke the silence. "So tell me, millionaire boy, what's your deal? Why pay someone to go on dates? You could snap your fingers and women would line up." Ethan swallowed hard. "That's the problem. They line up for the wrong reasons. They want the lifestyle, not me. I don't know how to separate the two." Her steps slowed. She hadn't expected honesty. Most men hid behind bravado, but Ethan laid his insecurities bare, and it stirred something in her chest she didn't want to name. "Maybe you're looking in the wrong places," she murmured, glancing up at him. For the first time, their eyes locked without pretense. Something charged hummed between them, fragile but undeniable. But reality has a cruel way of intruding. The next morning, Ethan found himself cornered in his office by Richard Collins, his oldest friend and business partner. Richard was everything Ethan wasn't: charismatic, confident, effortlessly social. He had carried Ethan through countless meetings, translating his genius into language investors could understand. "You've been distracted lately," Richard said, leaning casually against the glass wall. "Skipping strategy calls, zoning that out in board meetings. What's going on?" Ethan hesitated. "I met someone." Richard raised an eyebrow. "Well, that's surprising. Good for you, I guess. Who is she?" "She's a waitress," Ethan admitted. Silence. Then laughter. Richard's booming laugh filled the office, sharp and mocking. "You with a waitress? Come on, Ethan. Don't be ridiculous. Do you have any idea what people will say?" The words cut deeper than Ethan expected. He clenched his fists. "I don't care what people say you should," Richard snapped. "Your image matters. Investors don't like messy distractions. Don't throw everything away for some fling." That night, Ethan replayed the conversation over and over. Doubt crept in, whispering that maybe Richard was right. But then he remembered Sofia's laugh, her fire, the way she looked at him like he was more than just his bank account. And suddenly, none of Richard's warnings mattered. Meanwhile, Sofia faced her own battles. At the diner, her co-workers whispered when Ethan dropped by in his expensive car. One even muttered, "Careful, Sofia, men like that don't keep girls like us around for long." She brushed it off, but their words lodged in her mind like splinters. Could she really trust him? Could she risk her heart with a man who lived in a world so far above hers? Despite the doubts, neither of them pulled away. They met again and again, nights blurred into laughter, stolen glances, and hesitant touches. Ethan grew bolder, Sofia softer, until one evening, after walking her home, Ethan leaned in. Their lips brushed, tentative and trembling, before deepening into something both terrifying and intoxicating. For the first time in years, Ethan's mind went completely silent. No numbers, no equations, just her. When they pulled apart, breathless, Sofia whispered, "You're going to ruin me, nerd." And yet, as she rested her forehead against his, she knew the truth: he might just save her. But love built on fragile trust is easily tested. And soon, the world around them would force both Ethan and Sofia to confront just how much they were willing to risk for each other. The days that followed felt like stolen moments in a city that never slowed down. Ethan found himself leaving the office earlier than usual, making excuses to Richard about creative fatigue, when in truth he just wanted to see Sofia. She, in turn, found herself looking forward to evenings she used to dread. Her shifts at the diner ended with anticipation, not exhaustion, knowing he might be waiting outside in that sleek black car, glasses slightly crooked, nervously tapping his fingers on the steering wheel. their connection deepened in ways neither could have predicted. Ethan showed Sofia pieces of his world, his penthouse with sweeping views of Central Park, his state-of-the-art VR headset, his vast library of sci-fi novels stacked in pristine order. He explained how algorithms worked with a boyish excitement that made her laugh until her stomach hurt. In return, Sofia invited Ethan into her world. She introduced him to her favorite taco truck, the one that set up near her apartment at midnight. She pulled him into spontaneous salsa dancing on a street corner, ignoring his stiff, awkward moves. She took him thrift shopping, forcing him to try on outrageous jackets and laughing until tears streamed down her cheeks. For Ethan, these moments were revelations. Money had never brought him this kind of joy. Sofia was chaos, color, and music in a life that had always been grayscale, but shadows loomed. Richard's disapproval wasn't the only obstacle. News of Ethan's relationship began to trickle through the upper circles of Manhattan's elite. Whispers followed him at charity galas and boardrooms, the genius millionaire with the waitress. Some dismissed it as a fling. Others predicted disaster. Ethan tried to ignore them, but doubt gnawed at him late at night. Sofia wasn't immune either. One evening, after a long shift, she returned home to find her landlord waiting with a smug smile. "You've been keeping interesting company, Sofia. Rich boyfriends don't usually last long in this neighborhood. Careful you don't get left behind." She slammed the door in his face, but his words echoed in her head. Still, neither of them pulled away. In fact, the more the world pushed against them, the closer they drew, and that closeness finally tipped into something undeniable that happened on a rainy night. Ethan had insisted on walking Sofia home despite the storm. By the time they reached her apartment, both were drenched, water dripping from their hair, clothes clinging to their bodies. "You're ridiculous," she laughed, fumbling with her keys, shivering as thunder cracked above. "Maybe," Ethan admitted, "but I didn't want you walking alone." Something in his voice made her pause. The vulnerability, the sincerity, it undid her. Without another word, she pulled him inside, the door slamming shut behind them. The air between them was electric. Sofia pressed her palms to his chest, feeling his heart hammering. Ethan's glasses fogged, his breath uneven. For once, neither of them hesitated. Their lips met, hard and urgent. Years of loneliness and guarded walls shattering in that kiss. When they finally broke apart, Sofia whispered against his lips, "Don't make me regret this." "You won't," Ethan promised, though his voice trembled with both hope and fear. In the weeks that followed, they became inseparable. Ethan's penthouse, once cold and sterile, now echoed with Sofia's laughter. She sprawled across his leather couch in thrift store pajamas, leaving coffee rings on his designer tables. He didn't care. In fact, he cherished every trace of her presence. But beneath the warmth of their growing love, cracks began to form. Ethan's board grew restless with his distractions, and Richard grew more vocal in his opposition. "This isn't sustainable," Richard warned. "She doesn't belong in your world, and if you're not careful, she'll destroy everything you've built." Meanwhile, Sofia wrestled with her own fears. She couldn't ignore the stares when they walked into fancy restaurants, the hushed whispers of women in designer dresses, who looked at her like an intruder. Worse, she began to feel the weight of her own insecurities. Could she really keep up with someone like him? Or was she just fooling herself, falling for a dream that would eventually slip away? Their love was real, their connection undeniable, but both Ethan and Sofia were beginning to realize that love alone might not be enough to shield them from the storms ahead, and those storms were coming faster than either of them expected. One night, as Ethan prepared to surprise Sofia with something that could change everything between them, an unexpected knock on his door threatened to unravel it all. When he opened it, Richard stood there smirking, confident, and holding something that made Ethan's blood run cold. Richard stood in the doorway, rain dripping from his coat collar, his smirk sharp enough to cut glass. In his hand was a glossy photograph, and the sight of it made Ethan's stomach twist. It was a picture of Sofia laughing with him at the jazz bar, his hand brushing hers on the table. The intimacy of it was undeniable, the kind of moment that tabloids salivated over. "Where did you get that?" Ethan demanded, snatching the photo from Richard's hand, his voice cracking with a rare edge of fury. "Doesn't matter," Richard replied coolly, stepping inside without waiting for permission. "What matters is that others have it too. If this gets out, Ethan, you'll be the headline scandal by morning. The genius millionaire who pays for dates with a waitress. Investors will panic, shareholders will revolt. Everything you've built will crumble because you couldn't keep your personal life under control." Ethan's fists trembled at his sides. "She's not just some fling, Richard. She's different." "Different," Richard scoffed. "She's dangerous. She's beneath you. And if you can't see that, then maybe you're not the man I thought you were." The words stung, but before Ethan could respond, Sofia's voice echoed from the hallway. She had come over early, carrying a bag of takeout, her hair damp from the drizzle outside. "What's going on?" Her gaze shifted between the two men, landing on the photo in Ethan's hand. Her chest tightened. "What is that?" Richard's smile widened. "Proof, sweetheart, that you're trouble." Ethan stepped forward, shielding her from Richard's sneer. Don't listen to him, Sofia. But Sofia wasn't so sure. She had been in enough bad situations to recognize when things were spiraling. Her instinct screamed that she was being pulled into a world where she didn't belong, a world where her every move would be scrutinized, twisted, and used against her. That night ended in tension. Richard stormed out, his warning lingering in the silence. "If you don't end this, Ethan, I will." Sofia dropped the takeout on the counter, her hands shaking. "He's right. You know, this whatever this is, it's going to ruin you. And maybe me too." Ethan reached for her, desperation etched in his features. "No, Sofia, don't let him scare you away." "I don't care what people think." She pulled back, pain flickering across her face. "Maybe you don't, but I do. I've worked too hard to be dragged through the mud because of someone else's choices." Her words cut deep, though she hadn't meant them to. Ethan stood frozen as she left, the sound of her heels echoing down the hallway like a slow, painful goodbye. For days, silence stretched between them. Ethan buried himself in work, his penthouse emptier than ever. But nothing could distract him from the ache of her absence. Every corner of the city reminded him of her laughter and the hum of late-night diners, her fire and the neon lights of Times Square. Sofia, meanwhile, tried to move on. She picked up extra shifts, ignored the curious stares of coworkers, drowned her doubts in routine. But at night, when the city quieted, she found herself replaying every moment with Ethan. The way he looked at her, not like a waitress, not like a passing fling, but like she was the only person in the world who mattered. She hated herself for missing him. Their worlds collided again sooner than either expected. One evening, as Sofia closed the diner, she found Ethan waiting outside in the pouring rain, no umbrella. His glasses fogged and his suit soaked through. "You're going to catch pneumonia," she muttered, hurrying to lock the door. "Then, let me," he said hoarsely, "because the only thing worse than being sick is being without you." Her heart clenched. "Ethan, I don't care about Richard or investors or what anyone thinks. I care about you. I can't lose you, Sofia. Not when I've just started to live." She wanted to resist. She wanted to tell him it was impossible, but as she looked at him, drenched, desperate, eyes burning with sincerity, her walls crumbled. Against every ounce of logic, she reached for him, pulling him into her arms. The kiss they shared then was nothing like the first. It wasn't hesitant or playful. It was raw, aching, filled with fear and longing, a promise that neither of them was ready to give up. Yet as they clung to each other in the rain, a shadow lingered in the background. Richard hadn't given up, and the storm he was preparing would test their fragile love in ways they couldn't yet imagine. For a brief time, Ethan and Sofia managed to carve out a fragile sanctuary against the chaos of the city and the weight of Richard's threats. Their nights were filled with warmth, movies on Sofia's worn couch, midnight walks through Central Park, whispered confessions under the glow of street lamps. But even in those moments of peace, an undercurrent of tension lingered, as if the world was holding its breath before striking. The strike came sooner than either of them expected. It began with a headline splashed across every financial blog and gossip site. "Millionaire tech genius pays waitress for dates, romance, or scandal." The article was merciless. Photos of Ethan and Sofia together, invasive details of her life, and a narrative dripping with condescension. The lonely nerd who couldn't get a woman without paying. The sexy waitress who saw her chance to climb higher. Sofia's phone buzzed relentlessly, calls from unknown numbers, messages filled with insults, even co-workers showing her the article with wide eyes. She slammed it face down on the counter and tried to breathe, but the walls seemed to close in on her. At the same time, Ethan's office exploded with chaos. Investors demanded explanations. His board questioned his judgment. Richard stood at the center of it all, arms folded, wearing the smug expression of a man who had warned them. "This is exactly what I told you," Richard said in front of the others. "She's a distraction. She's dragging your name through the mud. You pro who need to cut her off before the company bleeds out." Ethan's jaw tightened, fury surging through him. "I won't do that. She's not the problem. You are." The room went silent. Richard's smirk faltered, but only for a moment. "Then you're a fool, Ethan. And fools don't stay on top for long." Ethan left the office that day more determined than ever. But when he arrived at Sofia's apartment, he found her sitting on the floor, back against the wall, her phone abandoned beside her. Her eyes were red, her voice raw. "Why didn't you tell me this could happen?" she whispered. "My life, my job, everything is falling apart because of you." Guilt slammed into him. He knelt in front of her, taking her hands, but she pulled away. "I wanted to protect you," Ethan said softly. "I thought I could handle it." "You can't handle my life, Ethan," she cried, her voice breaking. "You don't know what it's like to be judged every second, to have people think you're nothing. And now they're all right there, saying I'm using you, and maybe they're right, because what am I even doing here? What could I possibly give you that you don't already have?" Her words pierced deeper than any insult Richard had thrown. Ethan's throat tightened. "You give me everything I've never had. Joy, color, a reason to breathe when all I've ever done is work. Don't you see, without you I'm just empty." Sofia's tears spilled freely, her chest heaving with the weight of her doubts. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to fall into his arms and forget the world. But the voices of judgment screamed louder. "I need time. she whispered finally, stepping back. I can't do this right now. Ethan stood frozen as she closed the door. For the first time in years, the man who had built empires with his mind had no solution. Days turned into a blur. Sofia threw herself into work, ignoring Ethan's messages. But his words haunted her, playing on repeat in her mind. She remembered the way he looked at her like she was more than her past, more than her struggles. And it terrified her because she wanted to believe it was true. Meanwhile, Ethan found himself unraveling. Without Sofia, the penthouse returned to silence, the city turned cold, and work lost all meaning. Richard pressed harder, investors demanded answers, and Ethan knew he stood at a crossroads, bend to their will or fight for the one person who made life worth living. He chose to fight. Late one night, Ethan appeared at the diner. He didn't wear his tailored suit. He didn't arrive in his expensive car. He came in jeans and a wrinkled hoodie, carrying nothing but a single wilted daisy he had picked from a street corner. The diner went quiet as whispers spread. All eyes on him, but Ethan didn't care. He walked straight to Sofia, who stood frozen, with a tray in her hands. In front of everyone, he dropped to one knee, not with a ring but with a flower. His voice trembled, but it carried through the silence. I don't care what they say. I don't care if I lose everything. All I want is you. Because for the first time in my life, I know what love is, and I'm not letting it slip away. The room erupted with gasps. Sofia's heart raced. Her co-workers gawked. And for one terrifying, beautiful moment, the world seemed to stop as she stared down at the man who had risked everything to love her. But just as hope flickered in her chest, the diner door opened and Richard stepped inside, eyes blazing, ready to tear everything apart. The diner fell into an uneasy hush the moment Richard entered. His polished shoes clicked against the tile floor, his tailored suit perfectly pressed, his expression sharp with disdain. He looked so out of place among the grease-stained counters and clinking coffee cups that the room seemed to shrink around him. Really, Ethan? Richard's voice dripped with mockery as he scanned the scene. Ethan kneeling with a wilted daisy, Sofia frozen in shock, the entire diner staff gawking. This is what you've been reduced to? Begging a waitress for scraps of affection? Gasps rippled through the room. Sofia's cheeks burned with humiliation. But before she could speak, Ethan rose to his feet, his hands trembling not with fear, but with fury. Get out, Richard. His voice was steady, stronger than Sofia had ever heard it. Richard smirked. Oh, I will. But not before everyone here knows exactly what's at stake. You're throwing away your company, your reputation, your future for her. She's nothing, Ethan. She's a liability. And when she's done bleeding you dry, she'll walk away, just like everyone else. Sofia flinched as if struck. Every insecurity she had buried clawed to the surface. But before she could retreat, Ethan stepped closer to Richard, his jaw tight, his eyes blazing. You don't get to talk about her like that, Ethan said, his voice low but unyielding. She's not nothing. She's everything I've been searching for. She's the reason I'm not just another lonely man in a glass box at the top of the city. If I lose my company, if I lose investors, fine, I can rebuild. But if I lose her, no code, no algorithm, no invention in the world that can bring her back. For the first time, Richard faltered. His smirk wavered, his eyes narrowing. You're a fool. Maybe, Ethan replied, but at least I'm a fool who knows what matters. The diner erupted into quiet applause, hesitant at first, then stronger. Strangers who had overheard every word nodded in approval, some even smiling. Sofia stood frozen, her heart hammering as tears pricked her eyes. She had never seen anyone fight for her like that. Richard's face darkened. Without another word, he turned on his heel and stormed out, the door slamming behind him. The silence that followed was deafening. Ethan turned back to Sofia, the daisy still crumpled in his hand, his eyes shimmering with vulnerability. I meant every word, he said softly, his voice cracking. You don't have to say anything now. Just know that I'll keep fighting for you as long as it takes. Sofia's throat tightened. She wanted to run into his arms, to drown in the warmth of his sincerity, but fear still lingered. Fear of the world, of the judgment, of what it meant to love someone who belonged to a life so far removed from hers. So instead, she whispered, I don't know if I'm strong enough for this. Ethan's hand brushed hers, gentle but firm. Then let me be strong enough for both of us. The days that followed were a whirlwind. Richard didn't back down. He called emergency board meetings, rallied investors, painted Ethan as reckless. The media frenzy grew worse, tabloids plastering Sofia's face on every page, twisting her into a gold digger, a scandal, a mistake. Sofia tried to retreat, but Ethan wouldn't let her slip away. He sent her little reminders of his presence, tucked into her locker at the diner, texts filled with clumsy jokes, even playlists of songs he thought she'd like. Slowly, the walls she had built began to crack, but the breaking point came when she received a letter in the mail, an eviction notice. Her landlord, pressured by the sudden media attention, claimed she was disrupting the peace of the building. Panic surged through her. She had nowhere to go. That night, Ethan appeared at her door with a simple offer. Move in with me. Not because I want to control you, not because of the scandal, but because I can't stand the thought of you fighting. This alone. Sofia hesitated, her hands trembling around the paper. Moving into his world meant crossing a line she wasn't sure she could ever return from. Yet as she looked into his eyes, earnest, unguarded, pleading, something inside her shifted. Maybe, just maybe, love was worth the risk. She took a shaky breath. Okay, but if I find even one robot vacuum cleaning my shoes, I'm leaving. Ethan laughed for the first time in weeks, relief flooding his face. Deal. As he pulled her into his arms, thunder rumbled outside, echoing the storm still brewing around them. But for the first time, Sofia felt a flicker of hope that together they might weather it. Little did they know, the true test of their love, the crisis that would either bind them forever or tear them apart, was already on the horizon. The first week in Ethan's penthouse felt surreal for Sofia. Gone were the cracked ceilings and the constant hum of laundromat dryers beneath her old apartment. In their place were glass walls opening to a skyline that glittered like a sea of stars, marble counters that gleamed, and silence so heavy it sometimes felt suffocating. At first she felt like an intruder in someone else's world. Her thrift store clothes looked out of place against the sleek furniture. Her laughter echoed too loudly in the vast rooms, and every time she touched something she half expected it to shatter. But Ethan made the transition easier. He cooked her scrambled eggs in the mornings badly, burning them every time but insisting on trying again. He set up a corner of the living room with bookshelves just for her, filling them with novels he thought she might like. He even took her to the rooftop one night with a telescope, showing her the stars beyond the neon haze of the city. This place never felt like home, he confessed softly, his arm brushing hers as they gazed at the night sky. Not until her heart tightened. For the first time, she let herself imagine a future here, with him. But peace was fleeting. The media storm refused to die down. Paparazzi lurked outside the building, snapping photos whenever she dared step out. Headlines twisted her every move. Waitress turned millionaire's lover is she after his fortune. Investors withdrew, partnerships stalled, and Richard fanned the flames at every opportunity. Then came the final blow. One morning Ethan's phone buzzed with a message from the board, an emergency vote to oust him as CEO. Richard had rallied enough support, painting Ethan as irresponsible and compromised. Ethan stared at the message, his face pale, his hands trembling. "They're taking everything," he whispered. Sofia's stomach dropped. "Ethan, what does that mean?" "It means the company I built my life's work, it's slipping away, and Richard is behind it." His eyes darkened. "He won't stop until you're out of the picture too." For the first time, Sofia saw him break. The man who had always hidden behind logic and numbers now looked utterly lost, like a boy staring at the ruins of a dream. She reached for his hand, squeezing it tight, then let him take it. She said softly, "You can build again, but if you let him take us, then he's won." Her words steadied him. That night, Ethan stood before the board and fought. He argued not with charts and graphs, but with conviction, telling them that innovation came from the heart, from passion, from risk. But Richard countered with cold logic, wielding scandals and headlines like weapons. The vote was close. Too close. And when the final tally was read, Ethan was stripped of his title. He walked out of the glass tower with his head high. But Sofia saw the devastation in his eyes. For days, he withdrew into himself, pacing the penthouse, staring out at the city as if it had betrayed him. Sofia tried to reach him, cooking meals, coaxing him into laughter, reminding him of the life they still had, but the weight of loss pressed hard. Finally, one night, he spoke. "I built everything I am on that company," he said, his voice hollow. "Without it, who am I?" Sofia cupped his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. "You're the man who shows me the stars. The man who fights for love when the whole world tells him not to. You're Ethan, and that's enough." Tears burned in his eyes, and for the first time since the vote, he let himself collapse into her arms. But their fight was far from over. Richard wasn't satisfied with taking Ethan's company. He wanted to ruin him completely, and his next move would strike at the one place Ethan was most vulnerable. Sofia, one morning, as she walked out of the penthouse lobby, a reporter shoved a microphone in her face, waving a news story. Her heart dropped as she read the headline on the screen. "Exclusive, Sofia Morales, hidden past the secrets she's been hiding from millionaire Ethan Price." The words blurred in her vision, and she knew with chilling certainty Richard had found a way to weaponize her past. The headline followed Sofia everywhere, on subway billboards, on diner televisions, even on strangers' phones as they whispered and stared. The article dredged up every mistake she had tried to leave behind: missed rent payments, a reckless ex who had once dragged her into debt, even an arrest for a bar fight when she was barely 18, all of it twisted into a cruel narrative. The gold-digging waitress with a shady past who set her sights on a millionaire nerd. When Ethan read it, his heart shattered. Not because of her past, he didn't care about that, but because he saw the look in her eyes. Shame, fear, the certainty that this was the end. "I told you," Sofia whispered, her voice breaking. "This was a mistake. You don't belong with someone like me." Ethan grabbed her hands, refusing to let her pull away. "Don't you dare say that. Your past doesn't define you. It never has. What matters is who you are now, and who you've made me become. But your world, your investors, The press, they'll never forgive this, she said, tears streaking her cheeks. Then I'll build a new world, Ethan replied, his voice raw but steady. One where the only person I answer to is you. For a long moment, she searched his face, looking for hesitation, for doubt, but all she saw was truth. And in that moment, the fortress around her heart finally crumbled. Richard's plan had backfired. Instead of breaking them apart, the scandal only solidified Ethan and Sofia's bond. Ethan held a press conference not to defend his company or his reputation, but to speak about love. I may be a millionaire, he said into the cameras, his voice ringing with conviction. But all the money in the world means nothing without someone to share it with. Sofia has shown me what it means to live, to love, to be human. If that makes me a fool, then I'm proud to be one. The room buzzed, some sneered, others applauded. But for Sofia, watching from the wings, her heart swelled. For the first time in her life, someone had chosen her publicly, without shame. Richard, furious at the spectacle, confronted Ethan one last time. You've ruined everything, he spat. No, Ethan said calmly. I've finally found everything. With nothing left to bind them, Richard walked away. His empire intact, but his influence over Ethan forever severed months later. Sofia and Ethan sat on the same rooftop where he had once shown her the stars. The city glowed beneath them, alive and endless. Sofia wore no diamonds, no designer dress, just a simple sundress that fluttered in the evening breeze. Ethan held her hand, his glasses slipping slightly down his nose as he smiled at her. You know, she teased, for a millionaire nerd, you turned out to be a decent boyfriend. Just decent, he asked, pretending to pout. She laughed, leaning in to kiss him softly. Okay, better than decent, maybe even the best. Ethan pulled something from his pocket, not a flashy diamond ring, but a modest gold band, simple and elegant. His voice trembled as he spoke. I don't want a world where I wake up without you. Sofia Morales, will you make me the luckiest fool alive and marry me? Tears filled her eyes as the city lights shimmered like stars around them. She had once thought love like this was impossible, reserved for others, not for a waitress with scars from the past. But here it was real, messy, beautiful. Yes, she whispered, her voice breaking into a laugh 1,000 times. Yes. Ethan slipped the ring onto her finger, his hands shaking. They kissed under the Manhattan sky, their silhouettes framed against the endless horizon. And for the first time, neither of them cared what the world thought, because love, true, defiant, imperfect love, had conquered it all. If you loved Ethan, the millionaire nerd, and Sofia, the fearless waitress, rate this story from 0 to 10 in the comments and subscribe for more incredible tales of love against all odds. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss another story. Thank you for watching, and remember, love is never about where you come from, but where you're willing to go together.